Hey guys, today I'm going to take you through how to make the Power Athlete Pizza Crust. This is by far one of my favorite homemade gluten-free pizza crust options. I make it usually at least once a week on the weekend. I've got a lot of requests for this, so here we go. Ingredients we're going to need for the crust. We're going to need some salt, we need coconut flour, tapioca flour, some minced garlic. We're going to want some grass-fed unsalted butter. The unsalted is important. I've tried salted butter before and it just doesn't turn out the same. And the last component is we're going to need some eggs. Alright guys, let's get started. Alright guys, so the first step in making your Power Athlete pizza is to add 8 tablespoons of butter, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a cup of water. What we're going to do is bring this to a boil and check back in. Alrighty guys, now that everything's boiling, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. Now the next step is to remove this from the heat. And now we're going to immediately add a cup and a half of tapioca flour. And you'll see this will create a gelatinous mixture. Okay, so now what we gotta do is stir this up. Now we've got things nice and mixed up, we're gonna let this cool off for 5 minutes. Now we let things cool off for 5 minutes, it's time to add the last step. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add half a cup of the coconut flour and 2 eggs. This part can be the most challenging part of making this pizza crust. So now that we have our coconut flour and our eggs in, we'll make sure we're not just stirring around. We actually make sure that we're working on folding the pizza crust back in on itself. Now this is going to take some time. We want to make sure we're always working it back in, almost like you're trying to knead the dough. And over time, what this will do is it'll start to look like a pizza dough. Another thing you guys can do once it starts getting pretty mixed up and the eggs and coconut flour worked in, then you can start actually kneading it back into itself. And that's what's really going to help kind of speed up that process of turning this actually into a workable pizza dough. Alright guys, so here's our finished product after a couple minutes of first working the ingredients in with the spatula and then hand kneading. Now we have something that looks like dough. So you can see I've done a sprinkle some coconut flour on the top of this. This is going to help so when I use my roller, it doesn't stick to it. And you'll all notice that I pre-shaped the parchment paper. This isn't something you have to do, but I just find this allows me to work the dough into shape better. All right, so all we're going to do now is use that roller and shape that into our pizza. After a couple minutes of working out, now we have something that looks like a pizza crust. Alright, so now we have to finish things off by baking it. So what we're going to do is we're going to bake it at 350 degrees for, we're going to do 35 minutes. Alright, check back in on 35 minutes. So while the pizza crust is going, I'm going to work on the toppings. You guys can do a number of different combinations. Today I chose to go with a meat lover's pizza. So today we're just going to go with some good old-fashioned marinara pizza sauce. You guys can find any that you like. I would just suggest taking the ingredients, making sure there aren't things like soybean oil or a lot of sugar into them. This is a good brand that I found at Fresh Time that I like. Then we're going to go with some pepperoni. Went with Boar's Head brand. I haven't had it before, excited to try it. Gonna go with some shredded mozzarella. Same thing guys, you can change your cheese up to whatever you want. We're gonna add in some mushrooms. I'm gonna do a pound of ground beef, do some bacon, and also gonna throw in some onion. Alright guys, so the first topping we'll work on is the bacon. For those guys that are local, I got this at Fresh Time. This is their thick cut applewood bacon. Now the way I'm gonna cook this is I'm actually going to bake it. For a number of different reasons. I really like the way the flavor and the taste turns out, as well as it allows me to multitask and work on other things. So we're going to make this the same temperature as our pizza crust at that 350 degrees. So we're going to get that in there. So all I'll do is check on this every 10 minutes or so, flipping it when I need to. And I'm just gonna keep it going until I get it the way that I want it. Next topping I'm gonna get started is the ground beef. So I went ahead and added a little salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic salt to it. Just to taste, you guys can kind of figure out how much you like of each. I did this just so it wasn't bland tasting on the pizza. So all I'll do is get this browned on up, and while that's working, I'm gonna start chopping up my mushrooms and onions. All right guys, so next what I'm gonna do is work on the onions. So I didn't do anything special with the onions. I just simply removed their outer shell and just simply cut them in half. All right. So what I'm gonna do is, using a good knife, is I'm just going to slice them lengthwise. Now, this is how I prefer to have my onions. You guys can dice these, chop these, just whatever style you like. All right, so next on to the mushrooms. All right guys, so now we're gonna start prepping our mushrooms. If you wanted to, you could simply leave them whole like this. I just prefer mine to be more diced up and chopped up. So all I'm gonna simply do is just take the knife, going back and forth, working different angles, get them to the size that I want. All right, so now you can see they kind of have more of that finely chopped quality to them. Like I said, you guys can leave them whole if you want, or go ahead and chop them up. All right, now we're gonna go check back on the beef. Now you can see that our ground beef is nice and browned. So last step we can do this is transfer it into something to strain the excess fat. What this is gonna do is just allow for a better pizza crust. Otherwise, all this fat that you can see on there is just gonna sink into the crust, and it's just gonna make it a soggy crust, and no one wants that. We're about halfway done with our pizza crust cooking time. So we're just gonna check in to see how things are coming along. Look at it, starting to brown up. So what I'm gonna do is actually rotate this 180 degrees. And the only reason that I'm doing that is I noticed that my oven doesn't cook quite evenly. So that's gonna allow me to make sure that I get the pizza all the way done evenly. Next topping we're working on is the onions and the mushrooms. So you can see I got them in my pan with some little coconut oil. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna saute these until they get some nice coloring on them. While our onions and mushrooms are sauteing, we're gonna check in on our bacon. All right, so as you guys can see, it's starting to get some nice coloring, starting to get done. So what I'm gonna do is to give this another flip and probably check in about 10 more minutes, and it should be good to take out. Mushroom and onion, you get some good coloring, getting some browning on there. The onions are a bit more transparent now. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these off. And it looks like we have 1 minute and 15 seconds left until that pizza crust is done. So, not bad timing. All right, let's see how our pizza's doing. So it looks like it's shaping up pretty good. That is the end of our 35-minute timer that we set. I'm actually gonna let this go for probably about another 5 more minutes. Okay, I'd like to see kind of more of a golden brown pizza crust, and it still looks like it's a little squishy. We don't want that. So we're gonna put another 5 minutes on the timer and check back in. But while we're down here, let's check on our bacon. Oh yeah, that's ready to come out. So while our pizza is finishing up, it's time to get the bacon going. Look how that turned out from the oven. Okay, so last thing to do is just chop it up. All right, now we got some meat candy sprinkles to go on the pizza, aka bacon. Sounds like the pizza is going off. Let's go check that. Okay, so let's go ahead and check how the pizza is doing this time around. Looks like we're starting to get some more of that goldening that we're looking for around the crust and the top. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this out. And now all that's left to do is put those guys on that guy. All the toppings are on. We are in the home stretch. So what I'm gonna do is put this back in the oven, keeping it at 350, and just keeping an eye on the cheese until all evenly melts. We'll check back in. Now we're gonna check in and see how the pizza is doing. It looks like all the cheese is starting to eat pretty evenly. Okay, so now we got this melted. The last finishing touch to this whole thing is to take this guy, we're gonna put it on broil. We're gonna do that for about a minute or so. What this will do is get a nice golden, crunchy crust on the top. Let's check in and see how things are going. There we go. That's exactly what we're going for. So this is a Power Athlete pizza from start to finish. This usually takes me around an hour to do. I know it's a long time, but it is definitely worth the wait. So what I'll do, guys, is I'll post up the recipe as well as the original Power Athlete article on this. Hit me up with any questions you have on the comments and let me know what pizzas you make.